In Chapter 4, we take a look at what happens when you put both the supply and demand curve together. An interesting result occurs. What we do is we see how prices are determined, how quantities are determined. We get some insight as to why some people are unable to buy the product and others are. Now, this first video, we're going to look at the equilibrium and adjustment process. Some important definitions include a surplus. A surplus is a situation where at a given price, the quantity supplied is greater than the quantity demanded. So what will happen here is that the sellers will start to compete against each other. In order to try and get rid of all these extra products that they're unable to sell, they're going to lower their prices. Another important definition is what's known as a shortage. And a shortage is a situation where at a given price, the quantity demanded is greater than the quantity supplied. And what that implies, it's the buyers who can't get their hands on the product. There's not enough product available at the particular price. So buyers start to compete against each other by bidding up the price of the product. Finally, an equilibrium price. This is the price at which the quantity demanded equals the quantity supplied. This suggests that everybody who wants to buy a product at a particular price is able to get it. There's no shortage, there's no surplus. An equilibrium is a situation where there is no incentive for the price or the quantity to change. So to get a better idea of how these terms are used, let's look at a couple examples. So here we have a market for oil. Again, we put the demand and supply curve together, and I've already identified for you the equilibrium price. As we mentioned, this is defined as a price at which the quantity demanded is equal to quantity supplied. What you see is that at $70, consumers are willing and able to buy 70 units. And this happens to be equal to the same amount of product the sellers are willing to provide at $70. But let's see why this is an equilibrium by considering another price. Consider a price of $80. At $80, the quantity demanded is only 50 units. However, at $80, the sellers have an incentive to provide 90 units. This is what we call a surplus. At this particular price, the quantity supplied exceeds the quantity demanded. The sellers are going to start to compete against each other by offering lower prices. And as the price falls, the quantity supplied falls along the given supply curve, and as the price falls, the quantity demanded increases. Until eventually we get to a point where at that price of 70, there's no incentive for the price to change anymore. We're back to equilibrium. Now let's consider a different price. Consider a price of $50. At $50, we have a situation where the quantity demanded is equal to 90 and the quantity supplied is equal to 50. We have a shortage. In fact, more specifically, we have a shortage of 40 units. So the buyers are going to compete against each other, driving the price up. And once again, notice that as the buyers drive the price up, along this demand curve, the quantity demanded decreases. And as the price is driven up, the quantity supplied will increase until we get to $70. And again, at $70, there's no incentive for the price to change. Now, back in 1956, Vernon Smith tested this model. And he did thousands of experiments, and the results were the same. Given the amount that consumers were willing to pay, given the minimum prices that sellers were willing to accept, he was able to use theory to draw a demand curve and a supply curve, and from that get a predicted equilibrium price and quantity. And when he simulated that in an experimental environment, same thing happened. So quite interesting. This model does work well as long as the underlying assumptions hold. Now, another way to test the model is to examine its predictions about what happens when the demand or the supply curve shifts. And that's going to be the subject of the next video.